Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Eretz Yisrael. I'm R Avraham Shira. A little Erev Shabbat talk from Rabbi Nachman that should help us connect a lot of things together. We're in Torah 29, Kaf Tet, and he's telling us that there is speech and there is not speech. That true speech that is received by other people. I mean, there's a lot of speech that people don't really receive. They hear you. You think they hear you. They act like they hear you. But it doesn't really go in where it does any good. It doesn't cause change. It doesn't cause connection. It doesn't cause arousal and inspiration. So there's a speech that has inspiration. It has, Rabbi says, dot. Now, it has a spark of good in it, and that spark of good gets translated into what we call dot, which means knowledge. But really, it means much more than just simple, cold, hard knowledge, in a computer program. It's the knowledge that is a creation of wisdom and understanding, which is really your mindset, your focus, frame, lens on the world, what we call awareness. That's dot. And everybody has their own dot. And everybody has a dot that's flexible, that goes up and down. So there's a dot that is on a lower level, and he says that dot doesn't have tov in it, doesn't have a real spark of deep goodness. So people will act like they hear you and nothing's going down. And then there's a speech that has good in it, and people wake up and they listen and they want to know more, and they connect to you, and then they connect to your words. And that speech has dot in it. It has that spark of good. And we're going to relate to the dot as not simple knowledge, but as awareness, as we said. But he goes on to tell us in the end of the first paragraph, Azay blot bo tov, yesh good in that speech, aval blo dot nefesh lo tov. Without dot, the nefesh is not good. Now, what is the nefesh? It means the lower aspect of the soul. What's the lower aspect of the soul? It's the part of you that operates your body, that keeps your organs working when you're sleeping, that gives you experience of reality around you. All those are nefesh functions, right? Ruach is spirit, which is the feeling center, and neshama, the part in your brain that actually processes and thinks and weighs and works with information on how to react to life. So when we talk about nefesh, we're talking about that lower aspect of the soul. And if the soul doesn't have the higher level, the dot, then it's kind of like, like your pets. Your pets have nefesh. They have soul. Your dog has soul. Your dog knows you. Your dog loves you, hopefully, if you do the right things, right? And so, too, everybody has this nefesh level of connection, but it's not the deep inner connection that the Rebbe is talking about, that spark of tov, which leads all the way back to the spark of kavod, honor, which becomes a vessel. Honor is the vessel for the Shekhinah, the divine presence. So you see, it's layer upon layer, it's cup within cup within cup, each a vessel of the next higher light. And it comes down from the mind to the heart. And so when we speak without dot, without that spark of tov, then the speech is kind of like the everyday talk that people just talk and nobody pays attention. It doesn't really accomplish too much. But when we speak with dot, we have awareness of what we're doing, that we are here to connect and to connect to the great singular awesome power of the universe, then all of a sudden things start to happen. Now, but what he tells us here is a very important thing. It'll really help you. He says, Nefesh hu adibur, your soul is your speech. Now, the word nefesh in Hebrew can be used as a general umbrella term for all levels of soul, or it can be used as this specific lower level of soul that we were talking about. But when we understand that the nefesh is your speech, then when you talk, you are spending yourself. Every time you talk, you're giving up a piece of yourself. Now, it might be a higher piece, it might be a middle ground piece, it might be a lower piece of yourself. But that's why when you talk a lot, you can get really tired. But when you're talking about the higher ideas, and they're talking about the ideas of the soul, and especially of the creator of the universe and all his amazing wisdom that is enveloped and clothed in the Torah, then after you talk a lot, you don't feel tired. You feel more awakened, or more alive, because you're bringing in more soul as you give soul. So that's a general principle in Torah in general, is that when you give something, you get more of it back. So if you give money in charity, you get more back. If you give Torah, you get more back. The Gemara asks, how was Moses able to inspire 600,000 grown men, back in the times of the receiving of the Torah? And it says, because he lit everyone else's candle and his candle was not diminished. How do you talk to 600,000 people and not get tired? Well, because the Shekhinah was doing the speaking through him, and there's this level where your speech actually becomes automatic. And that's one of the levels that, well, God willing, we'll all reach or taste one day. Now, at the end of the first paragraph, Vayi Adam leNefesh Chaya. And God said, and behold, man, a living soul. Nefesh Chaya, a living soul. And the Targum, Reb Onkelos, who was a convert from Greece, who saw the greatness of the Jewish people, and he was a nephew of the emperor, so he wasn't a little guy. But he saw the greatness of the Jewish people and their sages and their wisdom and the blessing of God, and he wanted to convert. And his uncle wasn't too happy. And that was Titus, who was the son of Vespasian, I believe. But in the end, they said, leave him alone. Don't talk to him, because everybody he talks to, he converts them. Because there's nothing more powerful for a convert than to hear another convert who's done the work and has gone the distance to become a holy Jew like Onkelos was. Now he said, V'yidam nefesh chaya, man was a living soul. Ruach mamalala, he says it's a speaking soul. The speaking soul means that the part of you that talks is soul. So we don't have to break it down like the scientists or like the psychologists. We don't have to make it a material thing and a non-material thing. It's a union of powers. The soul, we call it self, you could call it identity, you can call it reputation, you can call it your speech, you can call it your desire. It's all compounded in the same substance, the same essence called you. So it's really a sweet thing to simplify our lives and not get caught up in definitions. Oh, you have a soul. No, you don't have a soul. No, man doesn't have a higher soul. Man dies like everybody else. And goes into all these arguments that extract the essence of what we're after, which is the living being of the universe in ourselves, which is our spark of God. And we don't want to lose it in the definitions, and don't go into those arguments. And because the people that don't know will tell you a lot of things, and the people do know will make life much simpler in our growth. Now, how do we elevate our dots? We reveal the spark of good so that we reveal the spark of speech that is received by others, that chain reaction. Lakim la'romem et hadat al yedei shevach hatzadikim. In a beautiful way, by praising the righteous, we elevate our speech. And then we capture that spark of good that's in the righteous, and then that spark of good elevates our dot, and that makes our speech received. So, it's something that you learn in public speaking, you learn it in Hollywood, you can learn it in politics, is that you don't really want to talk about your own good. But when you talk about somebody who's great, somebody who's better than us, it always is received and it's elevated from the source. Now, this idea of praising the tzaddikim, k'shemeshabeach mefarim et tzaddikim, when we praise them and beautify them, al yedei zeh nitromem hadat, this elevates our knowledge. And this elevation of our awareness, it changes the focus of the camera of your mind. And I'm not all day long thinking about what I'm going to do today, where I'm going to work, what do I have to do, what do I have to buy, what do I have to eat, all the little things that make up the everydayness of life. Those aren't the things that elevate us. They're necessary. But if we focus only on them, their life gets pretty empty pretty fast. But when we praise the tzaddikim, he's telling us we elevate the dot, then the dot receives a new level, and that new level is the spark of good, the holy spark in the soul that takes us to a higher level of speech, and then suddenly you'll notice people want to hear what you have to say. and you understand how important what you say can be. Because one good word at the right time and the right place can change somebody's day. And if you change somebody's day, you could change their life. It's that simple. And that's how it breaks down. Now, the Rebbe brings a famous verse from the Zohar, Kanesher Ya'ir Kino, like an eagle arouses its young in the nest. Nishra Daruha, the eagle is a symbol of the spirit, right? The flying spirit of man, this emotional flexibility that can go so high and so far. Da B'chinat Tzaddik, this is the spirit of the righteous, is this idea of the Nesher that arouses his nest. And this is Ish Asher Ruach Bo, the man who has the spirit within him. So you see, there's some people that's all they do all day is arouse other people to Hashem. And that is a gift, and that is a level that you don't reach overnight and not in 2 weeks and not in a couple semesters in yeshiva, right? It's a level that you reach after decades of hard work. Now, maybe people say, well, I don't want to do all that work. Well, that's okay. You don't have to do the work, but we should not fool ourselves by thinking that we can make this a religion of instantaneous results. There are instant results, but they're not really long-term. They just keep us on the path, and God keeps pulling the string and drawing us closer to Him. As we do that, we develop new vessels, and those new vessels strengthen us for the next step up the ladder and the next step up the mountain. So we don't want to fool ourselves, and we don't want to be fooled by others. And Rabbi Nachman said, when you learn my Torah, you will not be fooled by others anymore. And I'm sure people would come along and argue that in our generation, there's endless examples that go in every direction. But we know that truly, if you want to elevate your mind, speak about the great people. Speak about the wonders that you've heard and seen. Speak about the books, the good books that you've read, the stories that have been shared. Any of that will elevate your mind. That brings out the good. That good becomes the spark that jumps to somebody else when you talk to them about it. And that makes your speech received. And that essentially forms a path that we return to over and over and over until it becomes ingrained in us that we're actually always looking for the good. And the good thoughts lead to good speech. And good speech leads to good actions. And good actions lead to a lifestyle. It leads to a personality. And that good personality that you build out of good thoughts, good speech, good actions gets ingrained in us until we actually create our own destiny by starting with simply good thoughts and good speech. So I want to bless everyone to create the destiny that you know you were meant for in the first place. We weren't sent here to suffer for no reason. We can't avoid the suffering, but we can certainly find the reason. And when you find the reason, you see that it's really worth it. And the reason, of course, is ultimately to make our Father in heaven happy that He created us. And then you will have a nice seat in the stadium in the world to come when everything really gets revealed. Okay, have a great weekend, a good Shabbat, and we'll see you next week on all the platforms. Shabbat Shalom.